All right, so this video is called How Do Intelligence Agencies Use Psychological Torture? And just to give you a preface about a little bit of the history, I'm not an expert, but the CIA, they developed MK Ultra. They were trying to actually create mind control on people so that they could, have a world weapon of war or some shit like, some corny ass shit like that, right? But Malcolm X said, by any means necessary, because he did not think black society could ever cooperate with the white majority, right? And the irony is, I don't know if the CIA, directly murdered Malcolm X or whether they were assumed to be responsible for Malcolm X's death. But the funny, ironic thing is that in the 1970s, the FBI, they started developing forensic psychology, right? Because they wanted to interview criminals and understand psychopaths. The irony is, though, you can go back to the 70s in the United States, and you see all these white serial killers. John Wayne Gacy, Ted Bundy, Charles Manson, all these fucking weird-ass people, right? Ed Gein, right? The funny thing is when the United States media stopped reporting on serial killers, Canadian media never stopped, right? So we see, a high population of white psychopathy. And why is that? Maybe it's because when you have a colonial country, right, when they come over here and they commit genocide, rape, murder, just to colonize your country and your territory and extinguish your race and your culture. When they do that, yeah, they have the financial means to create a family, right? They have the resources to ensure that their psychopathic generations never step down from power. And hundreds of years later, we have the conversation of white psychopathy and serial killers, right? And of course, if this was China, we'd have a different context because China is an ethno-state, and psychopathy isn't necessarily unique to white people, but we're not in China, right? In a North American context, it doesn't have any context. White psychopathy in Canada, in the United States, absolutely does, because white people never step down from power. And guess what? Our corporate capitalism is based on maximum exploitation, and therefore, white psychopathy rises to the top because the system is made that way, right? There's a reason why the CIA hires for psychopaths. There's a reason why in the Patriot Act, they're using language like foreign and domestic terrorists or foreign agents or whatever, because they're treating people of color like domestic terrorists. Foreign and domestic. What do you mean domestic? Like, aren't we all citizens? Don't we all have the same equal rights? In the United States, no. They said no, that's not true. So when you were analyzing how psychological torture is used by intelligence agencies, right? For one, let me just leave off. Okay, I think the CIA, the FBI, they actually proved Malcolm X right. By developing forensic psychology, guess what? It doesn't seem like white psychopathy can be cooperated with. So by definition, it's by any means necessary. And it doesn't just apply to black people, because police corruption and government corruption was never solely a black issue, right? But let's get back to the topic. How do these intelligence agencies use psychological torture? Well, for one, they want to distort your reality and warp your perception, because eyewitness testimony is incredibly flawed, and human senses aren't infallible, right? We're imperfect, and therefore you need a lot of witnesses on a criminal stand just to get some semblance of a truth, right? So the human mind is very you can deceive the human mind, right? Whether through forensic psychology or spy work or espionage. And that's the difference, right? They'll sit right next to you and they'll use fragmented sentences. So for example, Jimmy, he went to the store. Yeah, went to the store around like 5 p.m. milk and margarine is off like 5-10%. So, we're going to get a good sale, but, we know where you are, we know where you live, and committing a crime that's violent, we know that we obviously have evidence, so we know what you're doing. We follow you around, and Jimmy is a good boy, so he'll be back around probably 6 p.m. And, when I was growing up, my parents never taught me how to, be responsible, do chores, dishes, but, when we finally lock you in prison, it's going to be a long time sentence. And guess what? We will get it on you. We'll put you in the police interview room. Right now, we're interviewing you right now. So it's just kind of like that. They use fragmented sentences to warp your perception. They'll sit right next to you, whether it's a disguise of two businessmen or a lover's couple. They'll just, 5 minutes in, then they start trying to play this mind trickery with you to psychologically damage you. And there's no time limit. Right? It's an open air prison when you're talking about psychological torture and intelligence agencies. And here's the thing, right? What is the difference between a security guard and a police officer? There is no difference, aside from the fact that a police officer is a trumped up security guard with a gun and a badge who's power tripping on a different level, right? So then what's the difference between an intelligence officer like CSIS or the RCMP versus a police officer? Well, again, not much, aside from the fact that an intelligence officer is someone who has a security clearance badge and uses technology to spy and hack on your devices for the government. That's it. And now police are using similar software, apparently, right? Apparently by an opinion piece from the Toronto Star. A Justin Lang, I don't know. I could be wrong. But that being said, right? That's one torture method. Fragmented sentences. They love playing psychological tools and games and trickery. Another one is false sympathy, right? They will position people next to you constantly and be somewhat, an air of an illusion of sympathy. So they'll say things like, oh, he's such a sad story and he's clearly mentally traumatized and we're worried for him. We're very worried about him, and his news story is about to hit any second now, and he's going to make a real difference and change. And they do this, whether it's corporate news media, whether it's these intelligence agencies or police departments, they all use this psychological damaging sort of mind control, right? Because they know it damages you, even when they're trying to be quote unquote sympathetic to your cause. What they're really doing is they're trying to depress you during seasonal depression time, during the winter time, when sunlight isn't so good and it's not shining into your retina, making your brain work. They're trying to fuck with you, right? False sympathetic causes. That's number 2. That's how they use psychological torture, right? First one was fragmented sentences. The second one would be false sympathy, which is huge, right? They try and break you down. And of course, all the other tools, whether it's, mental illness, they're going to gaslight you. Oh, people of color, always fucking gaslit, right? Your sexual orientation, your money, your wealth, your insecurities, your darkest, deepest insecurities, it's all on the table for these fucking people. So that's how they use psychological torture. And yeah, these intelligence agencies, like if you listen to them in their podcasts or their police podcasts, you know what it is, right? They're going over to other countries, creating coups for democratically elected countries like Haiti. Canada, look, it doesn't matter if you think Haiti is a government of thugs and gangsters. It wasn't your choice or decision because they were democratically elected. So Canada is just an absolute hypocrite. We're not a country of leaders. We are a country of followers. And it's exactly why our economy is crumbling, really and truly. So it's a scary time to live in. And with this AI technology, they're going to account for all moral behavior. So if they call you a rapist or a murderer or a terrorist, it pretty much gives them full reign to commit any violence against you. Anything can be said against you. And right now, if these intelligence agencies like CSIS and the RCMP, like the news media and like the Toronto Police and other police departments, if you are not responsible for what you know, then in our opinion, you could be subjected to the same violence. We don't care, right? If it's any extreme violence against us, if you're going to muddy the truth and not be responsible for the information you know, then you're inherently disrespecting our respect for the authority of the law and the sovereignty of this country. That's what it is. We will not respect you. Right? We can't live our lives with freedom, security, and love, and just love, be able to love. Right? We can't make our own free will and decisions. If someone's calling you a rapist or a murderer or a terrorist, you're not going to have any capacity to be a good person because you won't even want to try. Every conversation will lead to loneliness. Every job will lead to failure and misery. Right? There's not going to be a place for you to go. Right? And they know this. They're trying to kill you by a death of 1,000 cuts. Right? I have people, all kinds of people harassing me because I came forward as a Barry and Honey Sherman walking man suspect. I was a random passerby. And then I was accused of a lot of fucking stupid shit that I did not do, that they did not have evidence for. If you haven't committed a crime, then the police need to shut the fuck up. Right? The police need to shut their fucking mouths. The news media need to shut their fucking mouths and give me an interview. And these fucking punk kids in the neighborhood, they need to shut their fucking mouths. Right? Because they don't know what's going on. Right? I fought for the country. What the fuck did you do? Nothing. Right? And that's the irony of this situation. They're trying to kill you by a death by 1,000 cuts. Every joke, every insult that lands, the only way to have any dignity or respect is me to eviscerate your identity. Because if you try and fuck with me and traumatize me again and again and again and again, I don't care who you are. Rich, poor, old, young, I will fucking destroy and obliterate your identity because I'm tired of being harassed. That's how I get my sense of power back. That's my therapy. Because I can't go to therapy. Right? I was abused by my therapist as a child. And guess what? The trauma never stopped. They want to kill me by a death by 1,000 cuts. I'm developing heart issues and stress problems. My diet's fucked. I don't have any money. I don't have a job. And I have to move from my apartment. So life is going to be short for me. I'm not probably going to live to 50 or 60. I'm going to die very early. It's a death by 1,000 cuts. And in a world of the politically absurd where any violence can be justified against you, you're fucking right, it's tit for tat program. I wish all these people in government, corporate media, the police, I wish ultimate violence against you if I can't live a life of freedom, security, and love. Fuck your authority, it means nothing. And that's how these intelligence agencies are using psychological torture.